Today at National Cabinet we discussed border controls at length. It was a productive discussion, but I made it clear that Western Australia will not be agreeing to a hotspot model or a hotspot definition which replaces our successful border controls. Western Australia has always avoided setting an arbitrary deadline on borders. A date will be set when our health advice recommends it, but that might be some time away. We went through this before, and then Victoria happened. Opening and closing borders just causes more confusion, and it isn't a good outcome for the state's economy. The Prime Minister and other states respect and understand our decision, given the unique factors for Western Australia and the very positive direction our economy is heading. Unlike the rest of the country, WA is not currently in a recession, so we won't be prematurely reopening our borders. If we went too soon, it could be deadly, and there would be economic devastation. That would result in the reintroduction of restrictions. That would possibly mean reintroducing again a hard border. It would mean people would die. WA does not have border communities, so we don't face the associated social disruption seen on the eastern coast. In WA, we have positive economic activity. Business confidence is buzzing, and retail trade is increasing, and businesses are hiring. Our retail growth figures out today are outstanding. As I said, WA has gone 146 days with no community transmission. WA's border restrictions are working well. Unfortunately, the success of the hard border also comes with some consequences, particularly for families who haven't seen each other for a long period of time. I feel for those people. I also cannot see my mother and father and my brother in New South Wales. But I want to thank so many people for their understanding and commitment to doing the right thing as we monitor the situation over East. Because of our measures and success in controlling community transmission, we've been able to rapidly relax restrictions. We've been able to reopen nearly every element of the state's economy, and life in WA has returned to normal, virtually, in a COVID-safe way. Forecasts show WA has the most positive economic outlook of all states. We are the state going forward most quickly. For 2019-20, WA was the only state where our domestic economy grew by 1.1%. All other jurisdictions shrunk. This shows the positive direction WA was heading in before COVID. But it also shows that we avoided the worst of COVID in that states with closed borders fared significantly better than those with open borders. WA's housing and construction market is responding well to stimulus measures. It's going gangbusters. Weekly land sales have reported a sharp increase with the introduction of housing grants. More homes are being built. The building pipeline has increased by more than 75% between late April and mid-August. Retail figures for July were released today, and they show in WA retail trade grew by 3.8% and by 6.2% in annual average terms, the best result in 7 years. Retail spending totalled $3.4 billion in the month of July, the best result on record. It also shows, it's also important to note that WA makes a significant contribution to the national economy, in large part reflecting the strength of our mining sector and international exports. Western Australia is the engine room of the national economy. Prematurely reopening the state's borders will risk both the state and national economies. If we had an outbreak that led to the disruption or closure of the mining industry, it would have a significant impact across the country. It wouldn't just impact WA and WA jobs. It could result in a devastating reduction in financial support for jurisdictions, including the Commonwealth, across Australia. We need to remember that we'll also be in front of the High Court in our border battle with Clive Palmer. The outcome of the High Court is extremely important. The Federal Court ruled on the findings of fact recently. The Federal Court heard evidence from Mr. Palmer, the Federal Government and Western Australia, expert evidence. This included the prospect of a hotspot system being used instead of the border controls. The ruling was crystal clear. I want to quote from Federal Court Justice Renegade's findings. I quote, "The border restrictions have been effective to a very substantial extent to reduce the probability of COVID-19 being imported into Western Australia from interstate." He also stated, if the border restrictions were replaced by that suite of measures plus a hotspot regime involving either quarantining or banning persons entering from designated hotspots, they would be less effective than the border measures in preventing the importation of COVID-19. Less effective than the border measures. This is important to note. Some people want our hard border arrangements to be changed prematurely, against our health advice. I just can't do that. I'll be clear again. The hard border will stay in place for as long as the health advice recommends it. By almost any measure, Western Australia is in an enviable position in the new COVID world. We've worked so hard to achieve this, and we must do everything we can to maintain it. Right now, a hotspot model of travel restrictions is simply not as effective as a hard border, given the level of community transmission in other states. A hotspot model relies on factors outside of our control, and it significantly increases the risk of an outbreak. And for that reason, at this stage, the hard border will stand until the health advice says otherwise. The West Australian model has worked at this point in time. Lives and jobs have been saved at the same time. That's a great outcome for our state. In closing, the Prime Minister has announced a new model for National Cabinet, which I support. Not everyone needs to agree on everything for some states to make changes. That's fair enough. Australia's National Cabinet has worked very, very well. It's world leading and has meant that as a country we have done better than nearly anywhere else in the world. But that doesn't mean we all have to agree on everything every time. Geographic and economic differences can be reflected in decision making, and that is what has occurred today.